Chop, the original Guillotine League podcast. Everything you need to know to avoid the chopping block. Chop is brought to you by GuillotineLeagues.com. Now, your host, Paul Charchian.
Welcome to Chop, the Guillotine League podcast. I'm Paul Charchian. Very pleased that you are with us and that we got back to Thursday. I was not here Tuesday. One of the people nice enough to fill in, John Legeza. Hi, John. Great to have you with us again. This is like 3 shows in 4. What's going on here? You're our new Guillotine League expert. Holy cow.
Well, I told you I was really into this. I'm so into the unsolved aspect of the game. I've been playing standard fantasy for so long that the term muscle memory kind of comes to mind. You know exactly what to do and what to bid and even how to anticipate how the other people in your league are going to play. And that's just not the case. Every single Guillotine League is different because everybody's trying to solve it in their own way. I couldn't help but think of you when I saw a bid for $811 yesterday.
Yeah, that is something we don't do on this podcast as a general rule. Corey Parsons, also nice enough to help out during my vacation on Tuesday. Appreciate that. This is Thursdays, John. It is Flex Around and Find Out. That is every Thursday. We give you flex level players that we think you should bench or at least seriously consider benching. John, you've raised the bar a little bit. You've got some players coming up that are hard to bench, but you'll try to make a case for your guys, and we'll talk through that in just a second. We have a new sponsor alert, John. It is Vanicream. Vanicream gives guys no-nonsense, fragrance-free care designed for sensitive skin, because even guys need a little bit of help. Vanicream. John, I happen to know you've got rough patches on your knees and elbows.
Who told? Get out of my DMs, Paul.
Vanicream certainly will help. Before we get into releasing, normally I have 2 co-hosts on Thursdays, and we each do 3 flex around and find out players for a total of 9. It's just the 2 of us, John. We're going to do 4 each, so we'll do 8 players today. Before we get into that, I want to mention Derrick Henry in particular. We're going to talk more about Henry later. Get this, John. In 14 of the leagues on GuillotineLeagues.com, he has changed rosters all 4 of the last 4 weeks. That means somebody has paid for him, gotten chopped, paid for him, gotten chopped, paid for him, gotten chopped, paid for him, gotten chopped. 14 different leagues have had that happen. His price for Derrick Henry has moved from $413 after week 2's chopping. He had a big week 1 where Derrick Henry did not get chopped. Then it went down to $357, then $306, and then last week, Derrick Henry down to $201 on average. So for Derrick Henry, it has been a precipitous drop, and he has gotten people chopped in a big way. We'll talk more about him in a couple of minutes. I do want to mention one thing. I want to circle back to last week's discussion about the dangers of early bye weeks. And you and Corey, John, may have touched on this last week, or on Tuesday, rather. There were 2 players in the top 10 that were on bye. That was Bijan Robinson and Rome Odunze. We're both in the top 10 most chopped players on bye week. And it's because these early bye weeks so devastating because you don't have great players to backfill those spots with like you will in week 12 bye, week 14 bye. You'll be backfilling guys like Bijan Robinson and Rome Odunze with good players. You can't do that at this time of year. There just aren't enough good players out there. And that's how we see people with the good players with early buys getting chopped. I would have talked about that more if I were here on Tuesday, John, but I'm assuming you guys did cover Bijan Robinson and Rome Odunze in your coverage on Tuesday.
Yeah, of course. And how, players like that, in-game players can end up in the pool without it being the fault of the drafter. And the real thing we ended up talking about was I need to do a better job of keeping my eye on the horizon. Because I kind of missed this one. I didn't really have those guys in the leagues that matter. So I kind of lucked out, and sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. But that really ended up being the point that I wanted to leave people with is, man, the buys will sneak up on you, and especially in some of these 18-team leagues.
Right.
it's still pretty barren out there, because something else we spoke about was the teams that drafted well and built up on flex players, like you and I are talking about avoiding the onesies because the availability. Those teams are the teams that are still available. So a lot of the viable flex players are not available yet. And I'm there every Tuesday waiting to see what's on the wire. And a lot of times you find it's replacement level players if you're lucky. So when a guy like Bijan or Odunze out there, you actually came up because we were wondering where you would max out at. I'm over the 200 mark, probably the 250 mark. I'm never going to the 810. But since I got you on the wire, do you have that early season max for not just an end game player, Paul, a player that already has their buy in the rear view, so you know you're getting all the goodness coming forward?
Players, there's probably no player more valuable in Guillotine Leagues than Bijan Robinson.
Yep.
He was already a great player, and now on top of that, he's past his bye week. That's a material advantage. And so somebody like Bijan is, he would start to creep towards $300 in my bidding if I needed a running back. Now, if I'm not desperate for running back, I'm not paying anywhere near that much, because a month from now, Bijan Robinson's going to be going for $200, and a month after that, $100, and in mid-December, he's going to be $35. Right. And so having money left at the end is going to be absolutely critical, as always in Guillotine Leagues. I want to ask you
in the end game. Your experience kind of shines through. I've been finding myself a little panicked. I'm in first place. I don't even know what that means. Right?
It doesn't mean anything. That's what that means.
Right. That's part of what I meant at the Open. I love that. Normally, first place after 6 weeks, you're kind of sitting pretty. I haven't found a comfy spot in my chair.
Yeah, it's it's a sign that if you have the highest point total through 5 weeks, you probably have a good team, and you should not be spending much money. Probably because you've got 5 different separate data point weeks that tells you don't need to spend money, and that money's gonna be way more valuable later. Yeah. Every dollar you save now is worth $2 and $3 and $4 later down the road. But it certainly doesn't mean that you won't get chopped this week. John, I had a Twitter follower named Michael Blood ask me about trying to acquire Omarion Hampton and what you should do in Guillotine Leagues for a player like him that just went on IR. And this happens a lot, where a player gets hurt and then gets chopped because he gets hurt mid-game. And he gets hurt mid-game, doesn't put up a good game, and now he gets chopped, but he's heading on IR. That's 4 sure weeks you will not have a player available to you. John, for the most part, those guys are dead to me. I will put in a very cursory bid in Guillotine Leagues where we have 14 roster spots, not 20 roster spots. I can't just sit on a guy, and for the most part. So I don't bid very much on those players, even somebody as promising as Omarion Hampton. What do you recommend to people in that scenario when they're looking at a player who's going on IR, a great player who's going on IR, who's going to miss a month in Guillotine Leagues? What kind of bid are you putting down for good players who are in that situation?
This is funny. I actually addressed the macro to this, the meta on this. And I think you should have a number in mind, because my first instinct was not interested at all. There's a very good chance that player will end up as the hot potato, like you mentioned with Derrick Henry earlier on.
Yep.
That said, if you can get a player that you think is endgame in the great environment with a good quarterback and a great system, coaching like you're getting with Hampton, all the talent, bells and whistles, dual threat versatility, you got to at least get to 25, maybe. Yeah, I'm going to say 25, a nice even number, maybe even 26, right? In case anyone else likes that 25 number. But if I can get him, that's the one spot. I will dedicate one bench spot alone to a stash. You can't do two, because like you said, just entirely too shallow, and the supply is not there. Yep. But I'm trying to push myself to make a move for these players, because when he comes back, all of a sudden, he becomes that max bid type of player. But also, like you said, what's 300 now could be 200 later. And I'd probably rather get engaged with the bidding later on. But what's better than being a day early?
You got it. I think you're in the right kind of financial ballpark with that. Of somebody like Omarion Hampton, I think you just gave great advice. Around $25 for a high-end level player who I have to sit on for 4 weeks. And you're right, you can't do that with more than like one guy.
Right.
You just don't have the roster flexibility, and especially with bye weeks. You just can't use more than about one spot on somebody that's not going to help you for a month. All right, John, did you know the Chop Podcast is brought to you by Xfinity? Imagine all your football all in one place. Easy. Xfinity. Imagine that. John, let's get to our flex around and find out players. You get to go first as our guest on this show. And your first flex around and find out player is Buffalo tight end Dalton Kincaid. In some scoring systems, he is the highest or second or third highest scoring tight end so far. How do you dare end up benching Dalton Kincaid? Make your case, my man.
Yes, I know. Well, one would be availability of tight ends. I also think we've seen an uptick, and this is going to tie into the Kincaid, is route participation and volume, which I think is the most important thing for a player at the position. As good as Kincaid has been, the workload is a little sparse, which means the target per route rate is high, but the conversion rate also has to be very high. I don't know if you're necessarily going to get that. I'm looking now. Kincaid has a 60% route participation. So when you hear 60% route participation, but top three at the position, I'm generally thinking of some kind of regression. In fact, for just 4.8 targets per game, he has 4 catches. That's an incredibly high conversion rate. And on the flip side, it's actually the Atlanta Falcons defense that I want to avoid. 21.5 points, yes, is just slightly better than average, but all the macro stuff underneath the hood for the Falcons is just amazing. They've allowed the fewest amount of plays. They are top 3 in yards allowed, if not leading the league. They're top 3 in yards per play, EPA per play, and they're doing a lot of things right coming off their own bye, like we mentioned before. That secondary should be fully healthy, and they've been a major problem. I want to make sure I get this number correctly. The Falcons, this is on the season, allowed just 2 receptions a game to tight ends. That's number 1 in the league. So while Kincaid will be good, and I don't think you want to drop him, I think you could do a lot better, especially if you're one of those borderline teams. I know it's going to sound crazy, where you might rather have a Mason Taylor or another one of the young tight ends that's kind of stepped into a role, or if a Waller is available, a guy that's getting a lot of looks in the end zone at least. Again, volume kind of being the key.
All right, now for each guy, John, I'm going to ask you to give us your level of trust for this player on the Vanicream Trust Index, which is only 3 options. If it was a high level of trust, you wouldn't be talking about him right now. So right. I'm taking a high level of trust off the board. Is it some? Is it very little trust? Or is it a bowel loosening level of existential dread for Dalton Kincaid?
All right, it's got to be in the middle setting. I don't want to jump the shark here. I'm already a Jets fan. I don't want to take too much heat on the socials. And whenever you're attached to Josh Allen, there's always a chance that, he could pop. So I don't think it's time for desperation. But I really am worried under the, most narrow lens. I'm really worried about the matchup. If Kincaid kind of busts, and remember, that could still be part of a top 3 overall season. There are ebbs and flows. It happens to everybody. I think this is going to be one of the valleys for Kincaid.
All right, my first flex around and find out player is Jets quarterback Justin Fields. He almost always finds his way to a great game. In his 3 full games, Fields has been quarterback 2, quarterback 4, and quarterback 7. That is elite stuff. That's Josh Allen level stuff right there. But what happens if Justin Fields doesn't run his way to fantasy glory? And that could happen here. Denver is the exact wrong opponent for Fields. John, and this is the most crazy stat you're going to hear today. The Broncos have allowed 15 quarterback rushing yards on the season. 15. That's it. And they faced Daniel Jones, 2 rushing yards. Jalen Hurts, 3 rushing yards. That's it. So if that trend is going to continue, and now Justin Fields needs to build a box score around his passing, that's not as promising. Here come the Broncos. This is the team that is the best pass rushing team. They lead the league in pressures, sacks, sack percentage. And the Jets pass blocking hasn't been good. They ranked 23rd in PFF's pass blocking. And here's Fields. Not a bad passer, but not a dynamic guy either through the air. And I'll give you this X factor. Tyrod Taylor looked pretty comfortable in this offense. If this Jets team is looking to remain winless, they go into half and they're down 2 touchdowns. There's no guarantee Justin Fields comes out as your starter in the 3rd quarter. John, What is your level of trust based on the case I just made for Justin Fields on the Vanicream Trust Index? Is it some? Is it very little? Or is it a bowel-loosening level of existential dread?
Yes, as a lifetime Jets fan, used to the level of incoming disappointment every Sunday, I would say, prepare a maybe new set of drawers might be a good idea. Okay. The Jets are most likely in a lot of trouble. Maybe we'll mention another one of my concerns of my fades at Denver defense, like you mentioned, it is just awesome. And it's even more interesting to see the success they've had, just all the macros, yards of play, success rate, and EPA and tackle success, and, blitz plus pressure rates, just the Broncos really doing it all. And they've had a couple of hiccups on defense already. They've allowed 2 300-yard passers, Daniel Jones, Justin Herbert, and even Jalen Hurts went over 280, right? But then when we look at the other two, Cameron Ward Titans and the Jake Browning Bengals, right? 2 of those things are not like the other, Paul. 2 of those things just doesn't belong. Which one do the Jets more, properly represent? And it would be the 2 bad teams. The Broncos most likely totally decimate the Jets. I even like the Tyrod Taylor call in desperation. He probably played as well as Fields, if not better, in the one game that he played. That's was right. Also a top 5 overall finish, or maybe top 6 that week.
All right, John, your second flex around and find out player is a member of the Jets, as you alluded. It's wide receiver Garrett Wilson. What? He's been great this year.
Yeah, I did a pretty good job holding off on the segue. You know me, I'm very excitable, Paul, as you know. This is another really tough fade, but I think, I think this comes from a track record in history of betting on baseball, where you just understand that these events are all individual, and there are blips, even in the greatest season, right? The team that wins 16 games in a season can get blown out one of the losses, and it's not reflective of the entire body of work. And I think Garrett Wilson's game log this year is a perfect example. 4 of the 5 games, Paul, he was the wide receiver 12 or better. And the one where he wasn't, he was the wide receiver 50, where, the Jets had systemic failure, as they're known to do. Being a Jets fan, I know too much about it. That was against Buffalo, who was able to get pressure. And if that happens again, you could see more failure. So, again, I don't dislike Garrett Wilson. I think he's a phenomenal player. After this disappointing game, might be a good time to kind of buy low, if you think, because I do think that he's too prevalent of a piece of the offense to ignore. But again, I think this weekend, I think he's going to hurt you. And if you could get involved in a better matchup, I would go in another direction.
Nobody wants Patrick Surtain for a full game on your wide receiver. Riley Moss has struggled opposite Surtain.
Benito, too. Benito's a game record. They are disrupting everybody all the time, man. They blow up so many plays, and the Jets don't have enough options. Again, I think they're in a lot of trouble.
If you take away Garrett Wilson out of this passing offense, there's really nothing left. And so I think Surtain I think it's a Surtain on Wilson game. That's going to be tough. All right, what is your level of trust for Garrett Wilson on the Vanicream Trust Index? Is it some, is it very little, or is it a bowel-loosening level of existential dread?
Oh, man. It's bordering. Like, my leg is shaking a little bit, but I'm going to keep it in the middle. Let's keep it in the middle setting. Again, just because I really love the Taylor call. As you mentioned that, and that's kind of maturing on me, I think that's where the save is, that even if let's say it goes really bad for Fields, a couple fumbles, and he gets benched, maybe Taylor can save the day, and it doesn't take much to at least build in a floor. Again, I don't want to jump the shark on these calls because I am being kind of bold, but just pointing to where some of these players we rely on can have these blips, and I just think they're upcoming. So I think if you need to, in an 18-team league, of course, you're starting Garrett Wilson, but don't be surprised if it's the worst output and we get another kind of wide receiver 5 out of him.
If you call yourself a sports fan, you've got to have Xfinity. All the games in one place. There is Sports Zone, every pro football game, and over 1,000 college games. Highlights and alerts all in one place in Sports Zone. There's multi-view, view up to 4 stadiums at one time. There's the Xfinity Fan View with live scores, odds, stats, all in one place, personalized to you. And Xfinity Enhanced 4K for simply stunning visuals. And you get a voice remote. Just say football, or in John's case, say my crappy Guillotine team. Imagine all your football all in one place within easy reach with Xfinity. Learn more at Xfinity.com. Restrictions apply. New residential customers only. Taxes and fees extra and subject to change. All right, John, my second flex and find out player is Pittsburgh running back Kenneth Gainwell going up against Cleveland. Now, I've used on this Thursday flex and find out, I've used running backs against the Cleveland defense successfully 3 straight weeks. And so I'm doing it again here. This is the third week. Last time we saw Kenneth Gainwell, he was smashing the Vikings in Dublin to the tune of 134 yards and 2 scores. And there's a rampant and probably accurate speculation that Gainwell is going to find himself in a 1-2 punch in Pittsburgh because Arthur Smith can get his new out Najee Harris, and then he can frustratingly use 2 running backs, and fantasy managers will be pulling their hair out like always. But it's the Browns. And even if this is a relatively even split with Jaylen Warren, this is a tough spot. Browns rank number 1 in fantasy points allowed to running backs. They rank number 2 in run defense success rate. They rank number 1 in yards before contact at 0.2 yards before contact for opposing runners. And non-number 1 runners are doing absolutely nothing to the Browns defense. Justice Hill, 7 yards. Emmanuel Wilson, 25 yards. David Montgomery, 12 yards. Xavier Scott, 14 yards. Those are the last 4 running backs that have gotten any kind of workload as number 2 backs against the Browns. So, John, once again, as I will do for every player, I'm asking you, what is your level of trust for him on the Vanacream Trust Index? Is it some? Is it very little? Or is it a bowel-loosening level of existential dread?
Yeah, the existential threat has set in. Like, my terror meter is off the charts here. I think, even though it might look a little obvious with the split backfield, people are going to be tempted to run out Gainwell after what we just saw. Because, that kind of usage, both sides of the ball, he was fantastic, right? He didn't just get the usage, he was fantastic. But Jaylen Warren, full practice, I don't think he's forgotten. I think when fantasy gamers do that, I think it's a little bit of a fool's errand, trying to completely replace an established, let's call him a veteran at least. You nailed it. Browns defense, maybe the best run defense in the league. They're top 3 in success rate, rush EPA per snap, 3 yards per rush, and 0.04 yards before contact per rush. They are averaging, meaning the ball carrier, right at the line. That's everything. Plus, if you followed any of my work, I've always been cold on the Steelers because of the pace of play. They're bottom 3 in plays run. They're also bottom 3 in average play clock at the snap. So getting away from the Steelers is probably a good idea in general. I would not go near Gainwell at all.
John, your third flex around and find out player is Cincinnati wide receiver T. Higgins. We've got a new quarterback, but I don't think things are going to change very much with Joe Flacco at the helm, honestly. They go up against the Packers. The Packers just prepped for Joe Flacco 3 weeks ago and held him to 140 passing yards and no touchdowns.
Yeah, I think the white knight days of Joe Flacco might be over, right? Like him kind of riding it. Everyone is so hooked on this little Browns run that we got. We've seen the Colts, and that was a failure. And then we saw this year earlier on, and that was a failure with the Browns. And now we're going to try it, again in Ohio, a little cross-state action. Too many picks. He's too slow with the cement feet. He only completed 58% of his passes and was pretty terrible. Yeah, he's going to have weapons. So maybe that's why I didn't put Jamar Chase, because I think Chase has been able to show he can kind of elevate even the worst quarterback to get into the QB 2-3 conversation somehow. I don't think the pie is big enough for Higgins. And he's a great player also. And maybe there's a spike week in there somewhere, but I'd be running for the hills. I would not go anywhere near T. Higgins. I think any of the newfound faith in the Flacco run Bengals is misplaced.
The worst offensive line in football, and it's not close. Cincinnati Bengals. You already had Joe Flacco throwing the shortest NFL pass at barely 5 yards, and now his offensive line's worse. He's going to have to get rid of the ball even sooner and shorter. There's nothing to like here. What is your level of trust for T. Higgins on the Vanacream Trust Index? Is it some? Is it very little? Or is it a bowel loosening level of existential dread?
Yeah, you got to break the meter here, in particular when I think people are going to step on the rake. Right, it's easy to say, "Oh, I like this player. We like this player." The alarm really starts going when I think there are people that, gamers are going to be tempted to start. So I want to see first, not to put the gold star on my big nose, but I warned people about Browning when they were, rushing for him in the new, what that was going to do, and it didn't do anything.
I was optimistic Browning would be pretty good because he was pretty good at least by backup standards when he had that long run 2 years ago. So I was a guy that was optimistic that it wasn't going to kill Chase and Higgins. I was wrong.
Well, the line, you mentioned it was the line.
It's the line. It is.
Yeah,
it's not even Browning. It's the line. I'm
Joe Burrow is a special one-of-one quarterback,
Yeah. And by the way, you're the Bengals. You get Joe Burrow. So you've got your franchise quarterback. And you never build an offensive line for him? I mean, don't you just give up a draft? Once you've established that Joe Burrow is awesome, don't you give up an entire draft because go from one of the worst offensive lines every single year, and the guy's constantly hurt? Don't you give up a draft and just go we're taking 6 offensive linemen. We're going to fortify every place, and we're going to do whatever it takes to keep Joe Burrow healthy. I mean, it's such a dumb decision by that front office.
I think they got caught spending on the luxury items. You feel the pressure for a guy. Man, now I'm just piling on T. Higgins, but you spend the money on an extra receiver when the bones were no good, right? That's like spending money on a great paint job when the walls are rotten and the entire complex could fall down. It doesn't matter what the walls look like if the building is in pieces,
I hear you. All right, my third flex around and find out player, Seattle wide receiver Cooper Kupp taking on Jacksonville. Kupp is attempting play in a bye week. He's been okay. He's been about 9 PPR points per game. That is enough to be just right on that borderline of guillotine viability. And this is called flex around and find out. He's a flex level guy. Meanwhile, Sam Darnold obviously on fire. And so you might be tempted to roll to Cooper Kupp here. Jacksonville sounds like an easy matchup. You got to pick your spots with Cooper Kupp, and this is not one of them. Kupp is the Seahawks leader in slot usage. To a great degree, they've pushed Jackson Smith and Jigba outside, which is working great for him. Kupp's still predominantly running from the slot. The Jaguars are allowing the league's fewest points to slot receivers, 4.5 PPR points per game to slot receivers. That's it, 4.5. That's the equivalent of 3 catches for 15 yards. And if that's what we're getting out of Cooper Kupp, obviously that would be bad. Former Cowboy Jordan Lewis is their slot cornerback. He's been great. He's Pro Football Focus's 7th best rated cornerback on the season. He's got 2 interceptions, 3 pass breakups, and just a 61% completion rate against him. All right, John. So I've just built my case against Cooper Kupp. So you tell me, what is your level of trust for him on the Vanacream Trust Index? Is it some? Is it very little? Or is it a bowel loosening level of existential dread?
I think I was one of those people buying into the uptick, and I was probably in the middle, but now I'm turning it all the way down. I'd be very worried. The threat level is very high. I was told Liam Cohen was going to be an offensive coach. And right now that Jacksonville defensive spreadsheet is really lit up. You mentioned they're leading the league in defensive EPA against the slot. They play a ton of 4-3 cover 6, so you get, big tacklers inside. They've had 15 interceptions. Can that be? Wow. Defense.
I know. That's crazy, right?
Yeah, the defense has been incredible. So they're swarming. Yep. Yeah, I wouldn't want anything to do with it. I was kind of off a Kupp. Another good catch by you to be wary of players that when they start to spike, that might have been the spike and the high, not like the high that's going to continue to rise. I would be getting away from Kupp also, yeah.
Earlier in the show, we discussed Baltimore running back Derrick Henry, who in a variety of different leagues has now been chopped, reacquired, and reacquired, I guess. And now on his 4th team in 4 weeks in many cases. Let's hear your case against this not being a breakout week as he faces the Rams in a tough matchup.
Well, this kills me because Derrick Henry, one of my favorite, individual players, maybe ever. And he is an incredible player. However, this is a condemnation of the Baltimore Ravens defense more than anything. I think we know the book on Derrick Henry. Fantastic runner. We've seen that manifest this year. 5 yards per attempt and 3.25 after contact, nearly double-digit explosive rush rate, all the stuff you expect. However, he's very limited in the pass game. He struggles to earn targets. He's a 13% target per route. We know that's never been the part of his game. He cannot withstand the defense of the Ravens, which we thought would be a kind of strong suit. They're now missing starters at every level. They're giving up nearly 410 yards per game, nearly 6 yards per play, bottom 5 success rate. He gets scripted out of games before you're into the second quarter. Baltimore's giving up touchdowns on the first 2-3 drives now. So it's very unfortunate, but Derrick Henry is just not a part of this Ravens offensive playbook right now.
I'm going to give you some futility stats for Derrick Henry that are mind-boggling. Now, this is all after week 1, because he went berserk in week 1, and it looked like we were going to have vintage Derrick Henry all year. Since week 1, he's got 46 carries. Here is where he ranks in several key metrics among every running back with 46 carries since week 1. He is second to last in yards per carry at 3.2. He is last in yards after contact. Derrick Henry is last in avoided tackle rate. Derrick Henry hasn't topped 50 yards. And get this, here's the real stunner based on everything you think you know about Derrick Henry. He is dead last in broken tackles with 1 broken tackle since the opening game.
Yikes.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Derrick Henry, the end might finally be here. Start him at your own risk.
The end is nigh.
All right, so we need to ask for every player. What is your level of trust for Derrick Henry on the Vanacream Trust Index? Some, very little, or a bowel loosening level of existential dread.
Yeah, I guess at this point I might as well just fill in my auto order of Vanacream because I'm going to need like a 55 gallon drum of this stuff after the players we've been talking about. We're at that pivotal point in the season where preseason EDP starts to divert from the stuff we've seen this year. And like you said, you must unlearn what you have learned about Derrick Henry, maybe.
So that is a some, very little, or blow.
Oh, all the way. It's all the way. 55
You're
gallon
fully
drum.
blowed.
Yeah,
all right, you're
emphatic.
fully blowed.
My eyeballs are bugging out.
All right, emphatic blowed. My fourth and final flex around and find out player is Mark Andrews, the Baltimore tight end. We're staying in Baltimore as he goes up against the Rams. Andrews saw a major downtick in usage last week. It could be tied to Cooper Rush. Now, Cooper Rush, when he played half a season for Dallas last year, Jake Ferguson didn't do anything. He was tight end 31 in the Cooper Rush games last year, and then Ferguson's gone berserk since then without Cooper Rush. Then you bring Cooper Rush over to Baltimore last week. It's small sample size, just 1 game, but suddenly Mark Andrews, not a factor. Maybe that's a coincidence. Maybe it's not. Isaiah Likely also returned to the field. That could play a factor last week and may play a factor this coming week. But Mark Andrews has failed to top 30 yards in 4 of 5 games. And in games in which he does not score, he's averaging 3 catches for 15 yards. That's 4.5 PPR points, and that will get you chopped. He is touchdown dependent. And now the Rams, the opponent, last week, Jake Tongas did score against the Rams. I'm not saying it's impossible here, but they've otherwise only given up 1 tight end touchdown on the season, other than that Tongas touchdown last week. So, Mark Andrews, my final flex around and find out player. And John, I will ask you once again, what is your level of trust for Mark Andrews on the Vanacream Trust Index? Is it some, is it very little, or is it a bowel loosening level of existential dread?
Okay, for once, I think I'm going to leave this one in the middle setting.
All right.
I'm nervous, but I still think we might get a back-end tight end 1, which again is a pretty low bar to set because any of these guys could just kind of fall backwards into the end zone. And if you happen to go 2 for 18 with a score, you're probably a tight end 1. So, big claim by me. But still, Rams defense has been really tough. But Rush is targeting tight ends at a 25% clip. And I mentioned the Baltimore defense being so poor that I am expecting a ton of dropbacks, even though I think Rush had a 51 passer rating last I checked. So it's pretty brutal. I don't know. What's half a zero, Paul? What's 2 times
Right.
0? That's what we're probably going to get from Rush.
Divide by 0 makes my brain break. I don't think I don't think that
So
works
yeah,
very well.
it's probably pretty ugly. But I could see Andrews getting you that 3, 25 and 1, but I wouldn't push my expectations much past that.
All right, John, thank you for 4 flex around and find out players, a total of 8 on this show. We have had a ton of fun bringing you some players that we think you should be concerned about, or at least have some level of concern with. And a reminder that the Chop Podcast brought to you by Xfinity. Imagine all your football all in one place. Easy. Xfinity. Imagine that. And Matt, our producer, Matt LaMarca, help us sing. This is the Ravens right here. Maybe it gets better. Maybe it's not Titanic, but that defense is getting healthier. But man, this offense, Matt, I think you're right. John, thank you for pinch hitting. We appreciate it. We haven't seen a lot of Brian Johnson. We think he's going to be back next week, which would be fantastic. You've been a great pinch hitter these last couple of weeks, and our paths will cross again, no doubt. Thanks for listening and or viewing the Chop Podcast, everybody. A reminder, if you're used to just listening to us on your favorite podcasting platform, we're also available as a YouTube show, available on the Fantasy Life channel every Tuesday. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back on Tuesday for waiver wire bidding advice. Talk to you then. Bye-bye.